Before we dive in, a quick shout out to Thrizer. More on them later, but trust me, you'll want to hear this episode. Welcome to Bossing Up Overcoming OCD, the podcast designed to help you take control of your life and boss up to OCD. I'm your host, Erin Davis, OCD therapist and relationship coach. I'm also a wife, mom to 3, and dog mama. If you're overwhelmed by thoughts that aren't getting cured in typical talk therapy, it's time to climb out of that valley and enjoy the view. Grab your coffee, pop in your AirPods, and join me as we explore proven strategies, personal stories, and expert advice to help you boss up and thrive beyond OCD. Super excited to have a very special guest today on the show. His name is Dr. Tom Ingenio, and he specializes in acupuncture, East Asian medicine. He's got over 23 years of experience. I love how you specialize in the mind-body connection. I totally align with that because I feel like there's so much going on between that mind-body dynamic. And you have been featured in all sorts of places,
Mhm.
including CBS.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
You've also got a book out. It's called The Cupping Book, Unlock the Secrets of Ancient Healing. So very nice to meet you. And it's
Yeah,
such a
very
pleasure
nice
to
to
have
meet
you.
you.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
a
thank
pleasure to
you.
have you here. So I would love to hear more about what you do and how you've seen it help people because
Yeah.
in my world with OCD folks, like they love any resources and a lot of them are very health conscious.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
yeah, so tell me about how you got started in your work.
Growing up, I guess it was easiest to say, like you wanted to help people. My family
Right.
was saying basically you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be an MD, traditional route. And later on in high school, I remember having this horrible HMO policy where I had to go to like the one center that
Hmm.
they do everything out of, and I had to get to work. I was lifeguarding at the time, and I said, okay, you got to give
How
me
funny.
the 8 a.m. appointment. I'll go see the allergist and I'll bounce out and I'll go right to work. So
Hmm.
here I am, and I show up at 8 a.m. and there's 12 people in the waiting room.
Oh my.
And I said, I thought I had the first appointment. She goes, yeah, you do. So do all these other people. And I go, well, the doctor, she can't see us all at once. Why
Yeah.
would you book 12? So about a half an hour goes by and no one's been called back. And you can see
Oh
people are
my.
starting to shuffle around and everything. And then I go up and I go, look, I got to get to work. Can you tell me, is the doctor here? No, no, she's in surgery until 11.
What
And I
in the
go,
world?
how dare you book appointments when the doctor is not going to be here? And she goes, well, that's just how we do it. And I walked out and I was left with that, and that's not, I don't want that to sound like an indictment of the practitioners themselves. That's the system, right? And we see it happen in
Exactly.
hospitals, we see it happen all over the place. And
Yeah,
that
because
really put me off.
unfortunately, I'm sure you're not alone in that experience. You
And
know,
I was a high school kid going, this isn't right. That's
yes.
not something I should really be worrying about. And it wasn't a life or death appointment, but God forbid it was. I mean, I was just going to see
Right.
the allergist. It wasn't, yeah, yeah, like I needed open heart surgery or something like that. But that left a
Hmm.
pretty bad taste in my mouth. But the
Hmm.
thing that probably solidified it, and I tell this story quite often, my grandfather was a pharmacist, right? And back in the
Okay.
day, I would go help him in the pharmacy, stocking shelves, cleaning stuff up, those kind of things.
Yes.
And you used to have to pour the pills onto this tray. And the
Hmm.
tray had like this section where you could separate out the pills you were going to use into
Yes.
like a little fold over thing. And then they had any extra pills could be poured off back into the main bottle.
Uh-huh.
He's counting them out and he says, he looks at me and he goes, these pills are $5 a piece. The guy happened to be like a day laborer. So he was, getting handed cash at the end of the day, whatever, whoever decided to pay him felt like giving him. And he
Oh.
goes, this guy's got a family. He's got to take 3 of these a day for the rest of his life. And this is back in like 93, 94. He goes, these
Oh my
pills,
gosh.
that's $15 a day. This guy's got a family he's trying to take care of. And how the hell is he going to do this? And he didn't say how the
Hmm.
hell is he going to do it. I never heard him say anything harsher then darn. But
Yeah.
me, not so much. But he said, there's got to be a better way, and I'm hoping you find it. And that got locked away in my brain because the next year he passed away. And then I remember being in college classes, all pre-med stuff, and that memory came back to me, and it kind of
Hmm.
hit me pretty hard,
Let's hear a word from our sponsor. Thrizer transforms the way clients interact with their out of network benefits. As you know, clients need to manually submit super bills for their out of network sessions and wait months for reimbursement. With Thrizer, clients can just pay a copay for sessions while Thrizer covers the rest of your full rate upfront. They handle everything from verifying out of network benefits, submitting claims, to waiting for reimbursement on the client's behalf. In turn, they are an incredibly powerful tool for you and your practice to convert and retain private pay clients. You can try Thrizer completely for free with my link or go to join.thrizer.com/Erin.
In my junior year, I got a postcard in the mail for an acupuncture college. And it was kind of like, I couldn't have planned that. I
Wow.
showed up to the open house, which was being advertised. I came home with the application. I was enrolled my second semester of my junior year. I already started my master's degree program.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of lined up. I fell in love with the medicine, and I really liked the fact that it looked at more so than anything else at the whole person, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how many times has somebody been told, when they have a symptom, a physical symptom, and they go to the doc and they run every test and they do the blood work and they hear, well, we can't
The
find
stress.
anything wrong with you.
Yeah.
I mean, even today, it still happens, especially in the realm of
Absolutely.
women's health, right? So,
Yes.
no, it must all be in your head. One of the number one for the longest time drugs that was given for women's health was Wellbutrin. That's an
Yes.
antidepressant,
Mm-hmm.
right? You might
Mm-hmm.
stop smoking with it too, but it's mainly an antidepressant. And
Right.
and you're basically telling women, we don't believe you because we can't find anything. And
Mm-hmm.
Chinese medicine never does that. East Asian medicine as a whole is like, look, if you're having the experience, I don't care. It's valid to you, right? We know
Wow.
that how powerful the mind is, right? So even when we talk about placebo effect accounts for 30% of positive results. That's
Wow.
insane. So why
Yes.
would you turn that down?
Right.
Like, why play that down? Even if I just convince you that you're feeling better and you feel better, like
Mhm.
essentially your problem's solved, right? If it's
Right.
not structural, if it's not chemical, well, then it's something else and it's much less tangible. And
Mm-hmm.
that's something that Chinese medicine still takes into account because it doesn't separate the psycho-emotional components from the rest of the physical body. And I think that's a
Mm-hmm.
real strength. And, as an expression, we need people on the ground. We need the snakes looking at the smallest little bit, but we also need the eagles
Yes.
up in the sky to see the whole world view.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
when you have both of those working together, right? I never say, it's us versus them. I mean, that was an attitude that I think is foolish, where when I came out of school, it was like, oh, we're going to change the world and it's going to be, everybody's going to look at acupuncture. And I'm like, no, if you get hit by a bus, yeah, I want you in urgent care. I want you at the
Yes.
hospital. Come to me when you're stable. But before that, make sure nothing's really wrong.
Right. Yeah. Recognizing how beneficial like these methodologies are,
Hmm.
yet also acknowledging their role. You know,
Hmm.
like if you have a broken leg, I mean, you need to get that taken care of. But I love the fact that you're also honoring the patient and what the patient is experiencing because all too often, someone with like health OCD, I mean,
Hmm.
they are perpetually feeling like something is wrong, something is wrong.
Yeah.
And it sounds like even in your approach, if all of their labs check out or whatever, I mean, you're still telling them, like, let's try to get you better. Let's try to help you
Yeah, there's
get
still
to feeling
something we
better.
can do. I always talk about this now too, right? So my doctorate was a little bit unique where the focus was on bridging that gap between Eastern
Mm-hmm.
and Western medicine. So a lot of it was focused on research, and we talked about a term that they throw around all over in the medical field. Not too many people hear it outside of that, but it's evidence-based practice or evidence-based medicine,
Oh, yeah.
right?
We
And
do it in therapy too.
most people, most people will look at that chart and go, "Oh, it's double blind, placebo controlled, gold standard studies." And you're like, "Well, the Venn diagram's three circles." And certainly
Okay.
research is a big portion of that. But the other two are practitioner experience, what you and I have seen work,
Mhm.
what you and I draw from our knowledge basis,
Mhm.
and then what does the patient want? How does the patient view this, right? And that can come down to cultural
Yep.
issues,
Yep.
societal issues, their experience. And all of that, when we get that right, when we find that sweet spot where all three of those things meet, that's best patient outcomes. We know that.
Oh, awesome.
So yes, the research is there, the experience is there. The patient wants those things. And a
Mhm.
lot of times, at least in our clinic, right? I don't put on a therapist hat. I'm not claiming to be a psychologist, psychiatrist. I'd never do that. And normally I will say, "Do you have somebody to talk to?"
Mhm.
Unfortunately, now there's not enough people to talk to globally. And everybody
Yes.
that comes by and drops off cards calls me a week later and goes, "All right, I can't take any more patients." It's kind of a shame. But
Oh,
within
wow.
that, we're still working with the emotions. We're still working with that psychology
Well, yeah, I've heard
in
that.
those acupuncture meridians.
Yeah, I've heard that acupuncture can release a lot of
Mhm.
negative emotions or repressed emotions. So I'm super curious about all of that. I've done acupuncture one time
Mhm.
and I did it mostly for the experience. And I don't know, the doctor wasn't very personable like
Yeah.
you are, you know. It was just like, hey, how you doing? Okay, this is what we're going to do. And then like, I'm in this
It's
procedure.
it's rough. It's
Oh,
rough.
yeah.
Sometimes there's a language barrier, right? And
Oh,
it's
yeah.
funny. So coming at it, as an acupuncturist, like I want the guy that's treating above the Chinese restaurant that doesn't speak any English, that like he's been
That's what
doing it for
you want?
80. Yeah, because I know what he's doing. But you're
Oh,
going to get lay down. That's what you're going to
yes.
get in English, right?
Yes.
Now, what Westerners want, and I think this is like, I'm not trying to brag here. I think this is where I excel. I want to explain to you everything that we're doing, right? I don't want to say, "Oh, I'm demystifying chi," but we hear this word chi and we're like, "Oh, it's this mystical
What?
source of energy." And
Uh-huh.
no, no, no. It never was that. No one in Asia refers to it like that. The word chi does mean energy, but
Uh-huh.
even the phrase for atmosphere, weather, has the word chi in it, right?
Oh.
In Japan, when they ask how you're doing, they ask, "How is your source chi? How you feeling? How you feeling today?" Is
Oh, that's so
basically what we're
cool.
doing. And what we're talking about when we talk about chi is energy. And some practitioners will
Mhm.
fight me on this, but it is a tangible, does your body, much like physics, have the ability to do the functions it needs to do when it needs to do it, right? We don't do
Mm.
everything that we can, right? We're not always going to the bathroom. We're not constantly eating. We're not constantly, moving. Sometimes we're still, but do
Yeah.
we have the potential to do those things when we need to? So we talk
Mhm.
about it like potential and kinetic energy in physics. And when we look at how this term chi came to be associated with the meridians,
Mhm.
we have a cascade of functions that happen. It's not just one thing. So that needle goes into the body, right? And
Mhm.
we're increasing circulation, but we're also regulating the autonomic nervous system. That's vagal tone, right? We're
Oh,
switching you out of
lovely.
fight or flight and putting you into rest and digest. And you know
Mhm.
this as well as anybody. There's a laundry list of functions that happen when I'm in rest and digest.
Yes.
Many of them are physical, many of them are psychological, right?
Mhm.
I know that my brain waves change when I'm in rest and digest, right? I don't have that mental
Yes.
chatter going on. I'm
Yes.
making brain waves that look more like meditation. I know that I'm increasing circulation throughout my whole body. And by doing that, I'm flushing out tissue that has inflammation in it. And
Oh
sometimes
my
that's
gosh.
central
Right.
nervous system tissue
Yes.
too.
Well, inflammation is a big part of my conversations with
Mhm.
patients because inflammation in the brain can create depression, anxiety, even OCD. And
Forgetfulness, yeah, all and
yes,
not necessarily heavy duty things, but they can be underlying symptoms that you
yes.
can't trace to an individual disease.
Exactly. Yeah, so we talk about, different foods and
Mhm.
probiotics and protein and different things to help with inflammation just on a like, over the counter kind of surface level. But I had no idea that acupuncture helped with circulation, inflammation. I think
Yeah.
that would be powerful for women because we struggle with inflammation so often.
And this is another weird fact.
Oh, I love
And
it.
and
Bring
and
it.
and one of the largest areas written about in East Asian medicine is women's health. Now, it wasn't
Oh,
this we love women and this real kind of like idea of like,
yeah.
but this
It's real.
we need to produce babies, right? We need people to work farms, the emperor
Hmm.
needs heirs, those kind of things. But it gave us this really amazing knowledge base over thousands of years of experience and looking and measuring and writing it down and comparing it with other practitioners on
Hmm.
how to treat women's health issues.
Wow.
So the function might be fertility, and whether or not somebody wants to have kids, I don't care, but you should be able to have healthy cycles and go through even menopause comfortably. I know that's a crazy statement, especially coming from like a bald, bearded dude. But these transitions in life are not things that we should avoid or be afraid of, but they shouldn't be something that we dread, right? They
Hmm.
should be a transition that we can go through with relative comfort, and that happens
Yeah.
in men too. We do have andropause. I'll fight that fight as well.
Hmm.
Being almost 50, I can say yes, it happens.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but within that, being able to honor where you are and work on the body as a whole, right? You mentioned something, even probiotics, gut health. A lot of
Hmm.
gut health is tied to inflammation. We call
Yes.
gut the second brain. Technically it's the first brain because in lesser species they only have a gut, right? That gut reaction is what they go off of. So our
Yes.
higher brain came after our gut developed.
Yes.
And if that's out of whack, of course we're going to have issues. Right now, I know most of the serotonin that's produced in the gut actually stays in the gut, and serotonin is a signal that's used throughout the body, but those
Hmm.
feel good neurotransmitters are not being produced accurately. Of course we'll have depression, anxiety, OCD,
Yes.
these kind of things. So gut health is right central in all of this as well.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, let me ask you this, Dr. Tom. So, if someone has a fear of needles,
Yeah.
how do you overcome that? How
I
do you
so
talk them
so
through that?
we can do education, we can do experience, and I tend to see a lot of first timers who are really afraid.
Yeah,
One, there's a lot of techniques within East Asian medicine that are needle less, right? So acupressure is one of those. A modern day
interesting.
adaptation, which you might be familiar with, is emotional freedom technique. It
Okay.
plays on
Yeah.
acupuncture principles, but we call it
Yeah.
tapping, right? And it taps
Yes.
areas that hit either the start or the end of acupuncture points, right? So the it channels. So we have this idea that I'm clearing that whole channel while I do this. And like I said, he went very heavy into the psycho-emotional components. So, oh, this is grief, loss, anxiety, those kind of things are regulated by that channel, and by tapping at it or
Yeah.
pressing on it, we can treat those things. We have techniques like cupping, where we put cups on the body, not Chinese in origin,
Yes.
but part of East Asian medicine since about 300 AD. Gua sha is a tool that we scrape, right? So a lot of times we see it for facial stuff, but traditionally it
Mm-hmm.
was to treat the body.
Mm-hmm.
All of these things, all of these manual therapies that we're doing do stimulate the body in a similar way acupuncture does, and can have a psycho-emotional response.
Yes. Well,
So
and I
we
talk
don't
a
necessarily need to go in with needles if somebody's needle
okay.
phobic, but slowly we'll get them there. And then they see that these needles are nothing like a syringe. And based on the skill of the
Exactly.
practitioner, they can go in quite painlessly.
Yes. Yes, I agree because I remember the needles were super tiny
Mhm.
and barely noticed them, you know. But it reminds me of even thinking about like the tapping and the vagus nerve. There's so much information out there, but no one's saying like these are the pressure points. Like this is
Yeah.
why we do what we do. They just it's almost like how you go to the doctor, they'll say, take this pill and you'll feel better. Like
Yeah.
you don't
And we
I
never
love to understand.
question that. We never question that. But you come to somebody like me, and now you're like, what's in this herbal formula? I'm
Uh-huh.
like, dude, you just listed 16 prescriptions. Did you look up one of those when they gave it to you? Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, all right, why are you giving me the third degree? This has been around for 9,000 years, and that pill that you're
Yeah.
taking. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying I don't think you did the research on that one.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Yeah, I try not to call people out like that. But, if there is pushback, that conversation needs to be had.
I get it. Well, I love to understand the why
Yeah.
because, I've heard about tapping and I've even incorporated tapping, but I've
Yeah.
never been told it's because it's related to these pressure points. But
So there, go ahead, please.
well, it reminds me of like EMDR too.
Yeah.
EMDR, you hold a paddle, one in each hand or
Yeah.
something like that, and it helps release some of the emotions and makes total sense.
And
And
we're triggering the same effects, and this is the beauty, right? You have so many redundant systems in your body. That
mhm,
right, like even with EMDR, if you don't have the paddles, there's a light bar, right? I move my
yeah,
eyes.
yes.
So we can trigger these things within us through so many different modalities. And the expression all roads lead to Rome kind of rings true there, right?
Hmm.
I had a social worker that came in to see if our clinic was the right place to refer her patients. So we had
Hmm.
this long course, and she started asking me some pretty savvy questions, specifically like, I heard there's different styles of acupuncture. Oh yeah, there's family
Wow.
systems, there's major systems. Every country that acupuncture went to in Asia throughout history developed theories. And even talking to other practitioners, the way they talk about acupuncture, I go, oh, you practice these systems, which
Incredible.
is super cool. But I said, look, here's the thing.
Hmm.
Every one of them works as long as you understand the principles and why you're doing what you're doing. And she mentioned something called the Dodo verdict, which is from your side of medicine,
Oh,
which is this story about, it comes from Alice in Wonderland, right? The Dodo
okay.
hosts this foot race, right? Everybody's going to run the race. The Dodo gets distracted. He turns around, the race is over. Everybody's already across the finish line. He
Hmm.
doesn't know who crossed first, so he
Hmm.
declares everyone the winner. And the Dodo verdict, when it's applied to mental health, and I would argue, I actually got an article published in an acupuncture journal
Hmm.
about the Dodo effect as it applies to acupuncture in East Asian medicine. As long as you're doing something that has sound principles, the patient has a positive outcome.
Oh,
So
yes.
what we're doing
Yes.
matters less than the fact that the patient is doing something, right? So whether it's DBT versus CBT versus
Yes.
EMDR versus, well, as long as the patient is active in that process,
Absolutely.
they
And
have a positive outcome.
yeah, and the way you get them active in that process is you help them believe that change is possible, that
Hmm.
things can be different. And I get so frustrated at these doctors who say, well, you're just going to have to live with it. Like, thank you.
Well, I think that shows the limitations of that particular system of medicine right there, right? Look,
Hmm.
if I'm on my deathbed or if I have a life or death situation, you bet your ass I want a modern Western hospital.
Hmm.
Once I'm stable, though, they've got really nothing for me.
Wow.
And that's not an indictment.
Hmm.
Pain management, what was the pain management? Opioids.
Oh,
Well,
gosh. Yeah. That's
what did we
terrible.
do there, guys?
Yes.
And we
Man.
see that mental health. Well, I'll give you this pill. Well, I I should be talking about how I feel. Oh yeah, that's not us though.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like,
Hmm.
well, that needs to be a cornerstone of recovery for anybody,
Yes.
regardless of what it
You
is.
have to release these emotions some
Yeah,
way, somehow. Yeah. Well, and now I've done coping quite a lot. It's been
yeah,
a while.
yeah.
How does the cupping help with some of this vagus nerve stuff and
So
inflammation?
this is proximity to tissue, right? Vagus nerve is
Okay.
called the wandering nerve. Vagus means
Yeah.
wandering. It
Mhm.
hits every system once it leaves the cranial nerve, like comes down the
Mhm.
body, right?
Mhm.
So we know it regulates heart rate, breathing rate, immune system function, digestion, sexual function in some cases too.
Sure.
And when we put these cups on the body, they're increasing circulation locally, but also systemically, right? So you're creating a little bit of local inflammation right under the cup, right? We're pulling blood into that area, we're
Mhm.
filling that
Mhm.
tissue up. But the overall net effect, 10 to 15 minutes into that treatment, that's normally the treatment time we'll keep cups on one area. We trigger that parasympathetic, that rest and digest function, right? We've told that vagus nerve, hey, man,
Nice.
calm down. So even
Yes.
though it's a very physical thing, that cup goes on, you feel the suction, you feel the pull. Sometimes when it goes on, initially it can be quite intense. After a couple of minutes, when that tissue relaxes, right? And this is the weird thing about the vagus nerve. If you start doing, and this is why breath work works too.
Yes.
If you
Yes.
start triggering one of those I'm in rest and digest mode functions, your
Yes.
brain goes, oh, I'm breathing slower. I must be in rest and digest.
Yes.
Oh, I've triggered, I've mentally, through deep meditation, you can lower your heart rate. Oh, I
Mm-hmm.
must be in rest and digest. So all of those other rest and digest functions occur. We've tricked our
Absolutely.
brain into going, oh, I'm out of fight or flight. Everything's calm, everything's cool. Do what you're supposed to do, right? Serotonin and dopamine levels normalize, oxytocin is released, endocannabinoids, anandamide, which we only knew about since 1991. Ananda is
Wow.
Sanskrit for bliss. We have these cannabinoid receptors, and this is why we've had this love affair with marijuana since the beginning of time.
Oh.
Our body is covered CB1 receptors and CB2 receptors. CB1 receptors are even in our lungs, right? So
Oh,
when we
wow.
smoke, it's one compound, an endogenous, we make it ourselves, cannabinoid is called anandamide.
Mm-hmm.
Ananda is Sanskrit for bliss. It's the bliss molecule. So when people get cupping, when people get massage, when people get acupuncture,
Mm-hmm.
they leave and they feel a little high, right? They're not
Yes.
high, but that is your body's endogenous cannabinoids flooding those receptors, making you feel better.
Wow. Well,
Everything
this
is chill.
Yeah, and this reminds me too of, when I'm introducing breath work to a
Hmm.
patient, they may even say, like, oh, breathing doesn't work for me. I've tried these breathing techniques, it just doesn't do it for me. And I'm like, well, you haven't done it probably the way you need
Hmm.
to stimulate that vagus nerve and help
Yeah.
calm your nervous system. Because you can't do shallow chest breaths. Like that's going to,
No,
you know,
no.
aggravate your nervous system. Like that doesn't calm you. So I teach deep diaphragmatic breathing. Do you have
Yeah.
other breathing
So
techniques?
yeah. So deep diaphragmatic breathing is another cornerstone of East Asian medicine, right? We
Oh,
hear
wow.
acupuncture, Chinese herbal medicine, but it was lifestyle. It was qigong, which is like breathing exercises. We're literally saying, ex- gong is practice, qi is that energy. So we're making the energy circulate. Diaphragmatic breathing is central to not only just qigong, but Chinese martial arts, right? Especially Tai
Mm.
Chi and the
Hmm.
internal martial arts. But the idea is if we really want to, and their theory was if I stretch that diaphragm and get that deep breath, I'm
Yes,
also putting pressure on the organs. I'm giving them a little bit of a massage. I'm
exactly.
moving some stuff in that interstitial tissue around to get it into the lymph and processed. Um, these are exercises that were given by practitioners as well. You go
Hmm.
home, you do this every day, right? So gentle movements to open joints like we would do rehab or physical therapy now, but the
Yeah.
breath work was really what controlled that. Now we have people, holotropic breath work is amazing. They'll call it
Okay.
shamanic or they'll rebrand all of this, but the idea that you could actually have a psychedelic trip without taking a psychedelic compound
Hmm.
was cornerstone to Stanislavski Grof when they took away LSD from his research. He said, well, what else do shamans do across the globe to
Hmm.
trigger these experiences? Rhythmic, drums, music,
Yes.
chanting, breath work. And depending on what we're trying to do, in those cases, they're trying to actually increase internal CO2.
Okay.
In the deep diaphragmatic breathing, we're trying to increase oxygen, right? We're
Yes.
slowing, concentrating that. And that's why square breathing works so well. Four
Okay.
in, four hold,
Hmm.
four out, four
Yes.
hold. And we make a little square with our breath, but that
Hmm.
slows that down. Or, you know, not shortened exhale, but an exhale of like four, an inhale of four, an exhale of eight, right?
Yes, I
Extend
have
that
done that.
exhale.
Yes.
So I love all of those, but diaphragmatic breathing is so easy. And we even talk about it when the patient is laying on the table, right?
Oh,
So many times
nice.
they're coming in anxious and you're just watching their chest rise and fall.
Hmm.
Okay. Here's what I want you to do.
Right.
Put your hands below your belly button.
Exactly.
Breathe into that, right? And a
Yes.
big thing, and this is kind of a test of their stress anxiety levels, can they even do that? Sometimes that
Hmm.
takes a few treatments before we can even get them to that point.
Yes. Because they're not used to it and
No.
they're so tight in their muscles and they're just hard. It's hard to even have their mind connect with their body in a way of like, oh, let me see if I can get my belly to rise. Like
Yeah.
it's just lack of communication there. But what I encourage them over time, it's like you're walking on a new path in the forest and eventually it's going to become a trail because you're
Mhm.
going to keep doing this and it's going to become easier and it's really incredible to see their transformations and I'm sure you see that a lot in your
Yeah.
patients.
Yeah, I think you touched on it well with that path analogy because I mean, this is how our brain works, right?
Yes,
We wire what we focus on, and
absolutely.
being able to do that, you're making new neurological connections and retraining your brain, which
Yes.
retrains your body.
Yes, I love it. And I love the concept of like neuroplasticity. Like we're
Mhm.
never done with our brain cells. Like they used to tell you, like,
Oh
you're going
yeah,
to
you
kill your
you you
brain
have brain
cells.
damage and that's it, or
Yeah.
I particularly love, and this is part of East Asian medicine, and it's probably one of the older modalities within it, but meditation, right? How much of a cornerstone that is of my life right now. I haven't
Okay.
missed a day in over 6.5 years.
So tell me what your meditative practice looks like. I'm curious.
So it has changed. My
Uh-huh.
main one came from my mentor and his qigong teacher, who was a man named Master Sher K. Lu. He immigrated from China right around World War II when he came up in San Francisco. But he was a Taoist priest, one of the last ones before Japan bombed that temple. Uh,
Mm.
um, but he was teaching qigong and martial arts since then, and my mentor met him, I believe, in the late 80s, early 90s. My mentor introduced me to this really simple Taoist meditation. The
Uh-huh.
unique parts of it are more that it has an opening and a closing,
Okay.
get your, the induction, if you will.
Yes.
But sitting there and really just focusing on the sensation of the air moving through your nose, right? So we're not trying to
Well,
focus
right.
on anything, right?
And
It's not
that's
a
mindfulness.
mindfulness practice where I'm just picturing this happening, right? So it is
No,
mindfulness, but it's not a guided meditation.
exactly.
But
More the here and now stuff.
through the years, it has changed so much. Mainly, and I'm not trying to plug this product, and this is my little sticker on the front, Muse
Yeah.
Meditation Headband. If anybody is
Oh,
interested in
yeah.
meditation and wants to quantify it, this is a lab grade EKG.
Oh my
Um,
word. My patients will love it.
EEG, sorry, I apologize. They have several versions. This
Yeah.
one's their newest one. The owner of the company told me a new one's coming out in March. But this one we
Fabulous.
can wear for sleep and track sleep. It tracks motion, it tracks heart rate. So the app itself has different meditations for all of these, including guided meditations if you have a hard time getting started. And I
Okay.
like to every once in a while play with a different meditation. I even do the Monroe Gateway Experience ones, which are all like supposedly invented by the CIA and all this crazy
Oh
stuff.
my goodness.
But I
Yeah.
like playing with all of those because we know that meditation, talking about relating it to OCD, anxiety,
Mhm.
these
Mhm.
things, continued meditation makes the amygdala smaller.
Oh,
Amygdala is that
yes.
fight or flight fear
Yes.
center, right?
Totally
Specifically the
speaking my
right
language.
side. But
Yeah.
we also know, talking about neuroplasticity, it thickens the frontal cortex, our ability to think and
Yeah.
rationalize,
Yeah.
right? So you will get smarter if you do regular meditation. Your
Yeah.
ability to deal with stress and fear response will get better. It's not a magic bullet. This is a practice.
Exactly.
Consistency is important. A few minutes
Exactly.
every day is better than trying to grind out 60 minutes once a week. You're going to
Mhm.
get so frustrated and you're
No,
going
and
to be
that's not
horrible at it. I'm still horrible at it. I've been doing it since 94,
right.
but it's great.
Yeah. And you're not putting judgment on it, like you're
No.
doing the practice and kind of going back to that trail analogy, I tell them with these old paths that they were walking down, if we're no longer walking down those paths, like the grass is going to grow over, there's going to be
Mhm.
brush, and like we can't go there anymore. So it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. We're just not going to go there anymore. And with this meditation, it reminds me of like the here and now
Mhm.
mindfulness. And I feel like this conversation is so like interesting and also gives me more motivation to share this information a lot more like passionately with my patients because I know it works and I get that it works, but I love that this is like part of ancient medicine. Like I had no idea.
Yeah, yeah. I gave I've been fortunate enough through the Walter Reed Hospital system to give lectures, right? They asked me to do these little hour-long lunch and learn things, and I've done four of them. And one of them, I was trying to gross out the doc that booked me. I'm like, do you know how crazy I am? And I threw out, hey, you're gonna have me present in October. Let's talk about some really gross stuff from ancient history that you guys are using today.
Ooh,
And it was amazing where eating human placenta sounds so gross.
it
uh
does.
and
Oh my goodness.
and Gwyneth Paltrow had a little thing about it, and I'm like, oh god, but really that's Chinese medicine, and that's stem cell replacement. If you look
Wow.
at it, the cord blood has stem cells in it,
Yeah.
right? So maggot therapy, leech therapy, these things that sound so gross, every one of those doctors are like, oh yeah, we use that today, we use that for wound healing, we use that to debride dead tissue. And I'm like, I
Whoa.
know, here it is in a textbook 6,000 years ago. You didn't
Wow.
invent it. Western medicine went through criticizing all of this, and now we're looking back and we're going,
Yep.
there's
Whoops.
actual value here. Here's
Yeah.
clinical modern studies. Yes, this is definitely EBM. This is evidence-based medicine.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dr. Tom, I'm fascinated by that EEG
Mhm.
machine. Like, where can
So
someone find that?
yeah, I'll give them a plug directly. You don't have to buy it through me. I'm an ambassador. They just give me credit for their store. But it's choosemuse.com.
Okay.
And if somebody did want to buy it through me, I think it's choosemuse.com/Dr. Tom.
Okay. Okay. I'll be sure to put that in the show notes. And
I
how
wasn't
else?
trying to plug anything. I just
Yeah.
I genuinely, we had her on my podcast, the co-founder, and I basically fanboyed out. I just gushed over her for an hour.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
and I'm like, I love this. You don't understand. This helped me so much. And the fact that NASA uses it, and MIT and Harvard, and the Institute of Noetic Science is currently running a study through the app itself that I signed up for. It's just so amazing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so your book is readily available on Amazon.
Yep.
So I'll link that up in the
Oh,
show
thank you
notes.
so much.
Yes. And your clinic, it's called Charm City Integrative Health.
Yeah, yeah. So we're in Baltimore. Charm City is the pleasant nickname for Baltimore.
Okay.
Uh, so that's what we went with. I was talked out of Mob Town. Uh,
Hilarious.
I don't know. I think the edge in Baltimore, I could probably get away with it, but it
Yeah.
wouldn't track with people that relocate.
Okay. And any other way that the audience could connect with you?
Check out our website, charmcityintegrative.com. You can contact me there if people want to book me for presentations, lectures, consulting, and opening your own centers. I'm more than happy to do that. I love doing that kind of stuff.
Wonderful. Well, I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for your expertise and sharing your experience. I feel like you've just got so much great knowledge to share with the world, and I can't wait to bring this to the listeners. So
Oh,
thank
Erin,
you
this was
so
so much
much.
fun. I'm honored to be on here. Thank you.
I appreciate it. All right. Well, thank you.